For this, I have two examples. I did the exact same free association with this painting. This was a quite interesting experience for myself too, because a lot of fascinating associations went through my mind. My associations were father, anger, unfair, woman, catastrophe, injustice, wish, powerlessness, failure, freedom, bleed, blood, sexual suppression, hate, etc. As an example, I can go even further with this practice and investigate the sudden associations with questions like, why is this unfair? Or why is a catastrophe here? And see what associations will come up after these questions. Remember, these associations are supposed to be without any censorship and judgment. This is how you actually observe your own conscious thinking. This is how you expand your consciousness. People who are conscious of themselves do this on a regular basis by working with their judgmental parts and observing their actions, thoughts, behavior, and emotions. They observe and let the parts of their consciousness flow freely. But they are also aware that it's not possible for that to happen all the time, because there is always resistance that appears, and with this awareness they flow with the current of the resistance. You can do this exercise with anything that is in your focus. This can be a meditative practice as well. I also did the same practice with a song from the Smiths called Some Girls Are Bigger Than Others. And this is what I got. I hate my powerlessness. I hate being vulnerable. Vulnerability. Bitterness. I hate my needs, and so on. This practice can be applied anywhere and any time. It doesn't even have to be regarded as practice. It can be regarded as thinking and observing. 2. Use the IFS method in order to contact the parts of your consciousness which are resistant to happiness. If you don't know what IFS process is, you can look it up on the internet or get the Self-Therapy Using IFS second edition by Jay Earley, who is a licensed IFS therapist in depth. I am also planning to make a detailed guide into using the IFS process as a powerful form of self-therapy. If you get deeply into the IFS process, I strongly recommend getting Earley's book because it explains the process really well. IFS therapy is, to be more precise, internal family systems therapy, developed by the revolutionary psychologist Richard Schwartz.
IFS, we think people have parts, and parts are subpersonalities, and in distinction from a lot of other systems, we believe that we're born with them. It's the nature of the mind to be subdivided, that we're all actually multiple personalities, that people who carry that diagnosis aren't any different from anybody in here, except that theirs got blown apart more by the horrific trauma they suffered. But what are called alters in that field are really what we call parts. We call them parts because it's the most user-friendly word. It's not the best word in the sense of being descriptive, but most people don't object when they talk about their problems and you say, oh, one part of you says this, another part says that. So, so everybody's got parts, and they're all good. They all have naturally valuable talents and resources to lend to us. But as we go through life and encounter traumas and attachment injuries, they shift from their naturally valuable states into roles that sometimes can be quite destructive to us, not realizing that they were roles that were necessary often when you were in the middle of a trauma or had a toxic parent, but they get frozen in that time, and so they think that they still have to do this for you, and often don't even know how old you are. Often, if you were to ask some of these, what we call protector parts, they would think you're still 6 years old, and that therefore they still need to do this for you. So good parts forced into extreme and sometimes damaging roles hating the roles, would love to get out of these roles. But so that's one basic premise, that everybody has parts, and the goal isn't to get rid of them. The goal is to actually help them transform.
The IFS model sees every person as a collection of subpersonalities who all have their own roots, desires, and needs. Then, the IFS system doesn't look at those subpersonalities with judgment, but quite the contrary. It sees them with understanding. The IFS model is approved and used by many psychologists over the world, and it's even preferred because it's a really powerful method which is used to discover the most subtle impulses and emotions. I'm going to dedicate a whole video on how to use the IFS process. 3. Pay attention to both sides of your personality, your light, positive side, and your shadow, dark side, on a daily basis. Why is this important? Because healing doesn't involve only one side, it involves both. See both sides of you as valid. If you can't approve them yet, that's completely okay. Sit down and write a list of reasons why you disapprove your emotions and how you can approve them. This step is essential. You can't skip it, because if you don't take it, it will result with even more disappointing consequences. When you notice that you feel anger about being happy or sad about being happy, that means that you're resisting your emotion. This is the perfect moment to sit down and write why you feel that way about that emotion and how you disapprove it. Then, when you feel like you're ready, write a list of why you approve that emotion. 4. Find your role in this divine drama that we call the Earth. One of the most important methods with which Carl Jung helped his patients is by helping them find their meaning of their lives. He considered finding a role as one of the actors in the divine drama of life, this is taken from the symbolic life, as the most valuable necessity which will clear out your path while being in deep depression or anxiety disorder. If you want to hear more about Carl Jung's thoughts, you can watch How to Stop Wasting Your Life, Carl Jung as Therapist by Academy of Ideas. One of the biggest reasons why we're suffering and can't find happiness is because we feel as if our life is meaningless, and that feeling isn't wrong in itself. When we feel as if our life is meaningless, that's an indication that we still haven't found our purpose. Our purpose hides in what we love doing. It can be anything, from washing the dishes to writing a book. Interestingly enough, our purpose lies in something that we are good at. I genuinely believe that the reason why we're born with a certain talent or excellent at something is because we're meant to use it in order to bring something into this world. That's what it means to find your role in the divine drama. Our excellence can be anything. It can be painting, writing, making people feel comfortable, expression through speaking, washing cars. What is funny is that we always know deep inside what our purpose on this planet is. It's just that we are terrified to know it. If you truly want to be happy, you need to face the truth about your purpose. The part of you that tells you that your life is meaningless knows that you're too terrified to admit your purpose to yourself and maybe start from scratch. And that's why it tells you that it's meaningless, because it sees that you're walking mindlessly and are waiting for your last day. For you to be happy, you need to decide consciously to follow your purpose. No one can take choice away from you. It's all up to you and no one else. If fear is triggered while doing this, write to that fear. Ask it what it's afraid of. Its existence is valid, so it must mean that it knows something really important. Your parts are not against you, and never will be. They exist because they needed to protect you when you were a helpless child. Now it's your turn to protect them and connect with them. If you can't find your purpose, don't be afraid to try out new hobbies and new things. Nothing is lost in searching and observing yourself. While you do these new hobbies, observe yourself and how you feel when you're doing them. Don't force yourself or build a routine at first. Make your emotions the guidance for that. Let your emotions speak to you, and then, depending on them, decide your next action.
Leads me to the last question that I want to ask you. As the world becomes more technically efficient, it seems increasingly necessary for people to behave communally and collectively. Now, do you think it's possible that the highest development of man may be to submerge his own individuality in a kind of collective consciousness?
That's hardly possible. I think there will be a reaction. A reaction will set in against this communal dissociation. You know, man doesn't stand forever his nullification. Once there will be a reaction, and I see it setting in. You know, when I think of my patients, they all seek their own existence, and to assure their existence against that complete atomization into nothingness or into meaninglessness. Man cannot stand a meaningless life.
5. Decide to move with the current. One of the reasons why we fail to be happy is because we try to force our way into our happiness. We control everything around us because we're too terrified to let the divine guide us. When we heal these controlling parts who are too terrified to move with the current of life, we need to practice getting in the flow. What getting in the flow essentially means is practicing to follow our emotions and act on them. This is a much harder practice than it seems. This practice needs a lot of dedication and discipline in order to transform life for the better. Moving with the current means to put your emotions before anything else. This doesn't mean that if we don't feel like working, we shouldn't work. It means that we need to tend to and see where and why that part of ourselves doesn't want to work. What lies beneath those resistant parts is always surprising. It can be shame, suicidal tendency, fear, or apathy. The moment you feel that resistance when you want to finish a project or a task, decide to stop right in your tracks and stop everything that you're doing. Stop and sit with that part of yourself. Connect with it. You can connect with it through shadow work, through the IFS model, the completion process, or parts work, which are well explained and established by the intuitive speaker, Teal Swan. When you decide to move with the current, what you're deciding is that you will be willing to stop and change course anytime, because the current of life is always about change and unpredictability. And also, when you decide that you will be moving with your current, that also means that you will be moving with other people's current. That means that you will be able to stop and adjust to the current along with everyone else's. Example: if you plan to work today, but family visits you, change your course and find a way to spend time with your family first. Don't be afraid to prioritize them and to change your plans in an instant. Or if you have a project to finish, but tomorrow is your girlfriend's birthday, don't be afraid to change course in a second and finish the tasks involving her birthday before you continue with your project. We're so used to resist the current that we don't even question it. We don't pay attention to what decisions we are making every second, and that very same ignorance makes us miserable. We even complicate our lives without realizing it. 6. Take a look at your definition of suffering and pay attention to the trauma that causes the meaning that you assign to suffering. We usually connect the meaning of suffering with pain because we see pain as unnecessary. Investigate where these beliefs come from. Dive into the memories that cause you to assign this meaning to those painful experiences. And then check if that meaning was really true. In order to do this, I recommend Byron Katie's process called the work. It's a simple process which involves first to write the belief that you're observing at the moment, and then to ask the following questions. Is that thought true? Can I absolutely know that it's true? How do you feel when you think about that thought? And who would I be without that thought? Then, when you're ready, at the end, write the changed sentence which you realized at the end of the process, and that is true for you. Suffering is not caused by pain nor happiness. Suffering is caused by resistance to those states of being. If you want to understand and see other perspectives of suffering, I suggest Nietzsche's philosophy. I really recommend it. 7. Involve more philosophies or religions into your life. This is a perfect opportunity to see other perspectives and question a lot about our existence and existence of others. I am aware that this sounds as if it's not going to lead you to happiness, and that's absolutely true. It won't lead you to happiness, but it will help you investigate aspects of yourself and other people which you have never seen before. Not only aspects of us, but the world, this planet, the divine, or every single creature walking on earth. It brings up humans' natural instinct of curiosity, which is a strongly needed component in order to develop a happy mindset. We need to get back to being the children that we were when we were small, and we need to get in touch with our inner children. That's one of the most essential elements of life which lead to happiness. This also influences how we look at life and what meaning we assign to it. 8. Involve introspective practices like meditation in your day-to-day basis. Introspective practices help with getting in touch with the objective reality, which we often forget because we are immersed in our subjective reality. For happiness, balance between objective and subjective reality is really needed. We need to master the sense of when is right to let ourselves be immersed in the subjective reality, but also what moments are right for getting in touch with the objective reality. For balance, both are essential. Important to know when it's right for seeing the details of the painting and when it's important to see the whole painting. Meditation also helps with stopping thought. It gives right to silence, which helps with feeling calm and allows for deeper understanding of oneself. One of my favorites is Teal Swan's mindfulness meditation. I do it on a daily basis. 9. Do activities which involve the right hemisphere of the brain.
The newness of the right hemisphere makes it a devil's advocate. It's always on the lookout for things that might be different from our expectations. It sees things in context. It understands implicit meaning, metaphor, body language, emotional expression in the face. It deals with an embodied world in which we stand embodied in relation to a world that is concrete. It understands individuals, not just categories. It actually has a disposition for the living rather than the mechanical. And this is so marked that even in a left-hander who is actually using their right hemisphere in daily life to manipulate tools with their left hand, it is their left hemisphere, not their right hemisphere, in which tools and machines are coded. So this is very interesting. And it changes the view of the body. The body becomes an assemblage of parts in the left hemisphere. If I had to sum it all up, I would get away from all those things that we used to say, reason and imagination. Let me make it very clear. For imagination, you need both hemispheres. Let me make it very clear. For reason, you need both hemispheres. So if I had to sum it up, I'd say the world of the left hemisphere, dependent on denotative language and abstraction, yields clarity and power to manipulate things that are known, fixed, static, isolated, decontextualized, explicit, general in nature, but ultimately lifeless. The right hemisphere, by contrast, yields a world of individual, changing, evolving, interconnected, implicit, incarnate, living beings within the context of the lived world, but in the nature of things never fully graspable, never perfectly known. And to this world it exists in a certain relationship. The knowledge that's mediated by the left hemisphere is, however, within a closed system. It has the advantage of perfection, but the perfection is bought ultimately at the price of emptiness.
One of the most interesting things that Ian McGilchrist mentioned is that we live like the left hemisphere. Prioritize the virtual over the real. The technical is important, and the need for control creates paranoia in society. And we need to govern and control everything. He insists that there are 3 reasons for this shift. The left hemisphere sock is very convincing because it shaves off everything it does not need. The model is self-consistent because it has made itself. He mentions that the left hemisphere is the Berlusconi of the brain because it controls the media and is very vocal. The right hemisphere doesn't have a voice. It can't construct the same arguments. This is taken from an interview regarding his book, The Divided Brain. He mentions that we overuse the left hemisphere and we overlook the right. The right hemisphere always looks out for things that may be different from our expectations. It sees things in context, it understands implicit meaning, metaphor, body language, emotional expression on the face, it deals with an embodied world. It sees the world as concrete and understands that there are individuals, not categories, and with this he claims that there is a problem about the nature of the two worlds. We usually combine the two worlds in order to manipulate certain things, but for a broader understanding we need to use knowledge from the right hemisphere. By using knowledge from the right hemisphere, we can avoid the so-called Hall of Mirrors effect, which is an effect where the more we get trapped in it, the more we ironize and undercut things that might let us out of it, and we get reflected more into what we know about. There is nothing wrong with the left hemisphere. We need to return a lot of aspects from the right one. So how can we use the right hemisphere? With incorporating more changes and experimentation in our lives. As an example, if we question the meaning of life, we can search that question in literature. We can go on a trip or make a vacation in nature. We can read different books, listen to new music. In one sentence, we need to let curiosity guide us and always get out of what we know. See yourselves as scientists where you do research about yourself and about life. Fall in love with change and therefore always leave an open door for doubt. 10. Spend more time in nature. Nature helps us return our mind in a peaceful state. It has various positive psychological effects on the mind and the body. Doing yoga in nature can also enhance that experience even more. Nature helps us connect to our deepest roots because we ourselves are nature. If you can't stay for a longer period of time, you can involve nature in your daily routine. You can take a walk in a nearby park or use the weekends for spending time in nature. You can involve your friends and family as well. Happiness comes naturally. Happiness does not look for any perfect conditions in order to exist. Do you really want to be happy, or do you just not want to be miserable? What do you think of when you think of happiness? Those are questions which can only be answered by you. Did you like the visit in the Wunderkammer? If you did, please like, subscribe, and share this content if you see it as helpful. Did you also notice the artworks in this video? They're not put accidentally. If you want to understand my philosophical reasons of why I put them in the video, you can become a Crow on Patreon. In that tier, I'm posting the paintings and the contacts they have in the video. You can also see them like Easter eggs. But only crows can see through the messages, because they are messengers themselves. I would like you to support me on Patreon, because I need financial aid for conducting research and research projects with various institutions as well. I also have playlists on Spotify under my name, Katerina Lunas, if you need something to trigger and enhance your emotional experience. I also created a Facebook page where we can all gather together and share everything that comes to heart. Can you hear the footsteps? They're the footsteps of illusion. It's coming. But what are you going to do about it? Accept it or do something about it?